And Mr. Moore, would you do roll call, please?
Sure. Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Kinzer?
Here.
Ms. Martin? I think she's trying to be here. We'll come back to that one. Mr. Pennings?
Here.
Mr. Moore is present. Mr. Atkinson?
I'm here.
Mr. Bates is not here. Mr. Beaver?
Here.
Ms. Powers is not present. Ms. Morency?
Here.
And Mr. Dudley is not present. So we do have enough to meet quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. We will have a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, if you would just indulge us for a few minutes, we have a little housekeeping to do. I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Marzak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman Pro Tem. So at this time, we have election of a new, well, actually, do you want to adopt the agenda first? I realize that was right above election of new chair. Yeah, we got to stay in order.
Okay, well, before we adopt the agenda, I want to add it to the agenda for the very first item, just a small statement on the budget, what Dr. Marzak and myself have heard this week. So maybe we'll make that the first thing. Mr. Moore?
I was just going to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Beaver. We have a motion and a second. Yeah, go ahead and close the vote. And that motion does pass, so now I will give the floor to Dr. Marzak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman Pro Tem. So at this time, I will entertain nominations for board chair or self-nominations. Yes, Mr. Beaver.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I'd like to nominate Ms. Parker.
Okay. So we have one nomination for Ms. Parker for board chair. Okay. We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any other nominations? Anybody else wanting to step up and nominate themselves for board chair? Okay, Mr. Pennings nominates himself. Mr. Atkinson, you want to second that one as well? Okay. Any others? Okay, so we've got 2 nominations for board chair. First is Ms. Parker, and next is Mr. Pennings. So I guess we'll vote on the first one. So nomination of Ms. Parker for board chair. And that was nominated Mr. Beaver by Ms. Morency. Huh? Yeah. You want it? Do you want to do? We can do voice vote if you want to. Yeah, we can. So all those voting in favor of Ms. Parker for board chair say aye. Aye. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that to me sounds like a majority. So Ms. Parker, congratulations. You are the new board chair. I turn the board meeting over to you.
One question though, do we have to have 6 to have a quorum?
2, 3, 4.
I mean, 6 yes votes.
Well, we only have 7 members in attendance, and 5 voted yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the nomination.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Yes.
At this time, I would open the floor up for nominations for vice chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Mr. Pennings.
Ms. Kinzer.
All right. Do we have a second for Mr.
I'm
Pennings?
sorry.
For Mr. Pennings. Do we have a second for Ms. Kinzer? Second. All right. I guess we'll do a voice vote now for Mr. Pennings first. All those in favor say aye. Aye. 3. All those in favor of Ms. Kinzer? Aye. So 4 to 3. Congratulations, Ms. Kinzer. All right, moving on. We will now move on to recognition and announcements. I think the first thing is the good news of Murray County.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This month's good news is in relation to pupil services and is around attendance. This year, Murray County Public Schools saw an average daily attendance of 95.3% overall, and we saw student enrollment increases K through 12, top 12,279. This is a growth of 376 students over the final attendance of 11,903 at the end of the 2015-16 year. So I think it's safe to say that Murray County Public Schools is growing. So that's the good news for this month.
Very good. I know that I see Ms. Martin now. I know that Dr. Woodard has worked very hard on that, and we've seen that 95% posters all around town. So I know that that's been a big effort, and we appreciate the effort because it looks like it paid off. We hit that 95%. Moving on, our next item is TEA Distinguished New Teacher Award. Hi there. You must be Nicole Stimmel. Yes. All right. Is there anyone here from TEA or MCEA?
I can talk, so.
Awesome. Sorry.
They're not here. So last year I was nominated as the teacher of the year for my school, which then got voted on for the district, and I ended up winning it for the district. And so that made me eligible to win it for the state, and I ended up winning for K through 4, the new teacher of the year for the entire state of Tennessee.
Congratulations. That's a huge honor. One, to be recognized by your peers at your school, and then to be recognized throughout the state. What grade do you teach at McDowell? Music at McDowell. Well, congratulations, and thank you for representing our district so well across the state. Our next item is, looks like we've got some good news coming from a foundation. So I will turn it over to Dr. Jackson.
Testing. A year ago, I stood in front of this board humbly appreciative of the opportunity to lead Mount Pleasant High School. And I stand in front of you a year later ready to present the fruits of our first year's labor. And the big announcement today is not only leaves me nearly speechless, and for those of you that know me, know that that's an incredibly tough thing to do, but I stand in here today with a group of industry leaders, a group of folks that have been not only supportive, but willing to invest in a vision that is life-changing for the community, students, faculty, staff of Mount Pleasant, but truly pushes forward the Grow Murray campaign that's on fire right now here. And I'm excited to announce today that Vice President of Innovation, Mr. Ryan Pastrana, is joining me and his executive team, as well as Armin Bregtrup, mechatronics instructor, Mr. Eric Hughes, assistant principal, along with several students from Mount Pleasant High School. And today they will be awarding us a $500,000 donation to build an innovation lab inside Mount Pleasant High School, and this is courtesy of the Clark Legacy Foundation. So without further ado, I'd like to at least introduce Mr. Pastrana and his executive team.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jackson. One thing I do want to recognize and make sure everyone is aware, this wouldn't be possible without the Clark family. So I work for a company called Parker Hannafin, who recently acquired ClarkCore, which was a company headquartered in Franklin, Tennessee. And the Clark Legacy Foundation was the nonprofit wing, which was we used to help support the communities that we worked in. When Parker made the acquisition of ClarkCore earlier this year, many of the trustees of that foundation were going to be going their separate ways, either retiring or moving out of the area, and they decided that what they wanted to do was thank the communities that ClarkCore had worked in. So we had opened our innovation center here in 2014 in Columbia, and we were a big believer in giving back to the community and also promoting education. So when we met Dr. Jackson and learned about the opportunities to do a lot more with him and his students, we were thrilled at the chance. And then, timing is everything. Me coming here in 2014, meeting Dr. Jackson a year ago, and then a corporate acquisition causing a foundation to essentially want to go ahead and distribute its funds in large amounts such that they can make real change and real impact in communities. Whether you call it, fate, destiny, or divine intervention, somehow all of the stars aligned, and that's where we are today. And we are just very proud to be part of this and proud to be part of the community.
And at this time, if the board would allow us, we're going to present the Ed McMahon-style oversized check that I'm incredibly proud of. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I want to honor this board and show you our appreciation for allowing us to run with this STEAM concept, embedding arts into a STEM curriculum, creating a holistic learning model that empowers students through experiential learning platforms and truly prepares students as creators, not merely consumers of information, but truly prepares them for the industry that awaits. So thank you. I humbly thank you for allowing us to do that, for taking a risk. And I'm here to announce to say that that risk is paying off. So thank you. Let's do it.
thank y'all again for the investment that you've made in our community. I know that you've been a partner for several years now, and this just furthers that commitment, and we really appreciate that. I know since we do have some students here, I don't know if they would like to talk about what the Innovation Lab is going to mean to them as students, but we would, I think, love to hear if any of y'all have anything to say.
No, do you want to go first?
No.
If somebody would not mind, I'll display my embarrassment for the entire board to see. I was actually getting our principal's contact information, so if you could please repeat what was just said, that would be wonderful.
I think I was just curious to know, as a student, how this new Innovation Lab will impact y'all as students at Mount Pleasant High School.
Well, growing up, you know, in the Mount Pleasant community, everybody tended to look at us as kind of the kids that maybe weren't as privileged as everybody else. We didn't maybe have the sort of resources that, say, a bigger school like Central had. And, you know, we kind of were almost the downtrodden, the forgotten, it seems. It's what a lot of students felt. And with somebody like Dr. Jackson coming in and Mr. Begtrup coming in, they completely changed the school around, turned it around, made everybody feel positive about it. And to have something like this Innovation Lab come through, it's amazing. It empowers students. It made everybody want to come to school, made everybody want to be a part of the program. Education's now cool for all of us. We now want to go into careers in engineering and math. It's what we want to do with our lives. Sanaa, do you want to say a few words?
I completely agree with Mr. John Robert over here. When I first came to Mount Pleasant, all I really knew was Dr. Jackson, so it was kind of like, that's kind of how it was. Like, everybody was excited to learn, and I was like, okay, I guess I should be excited too. And it really was interesting because some of the upperclassmen started actually caring more about their work, and it's just really changed everything.
Awesome.
I just think we've all grown closer together just as we built the escape games and everything. I just couldn't have said it better than him.
He did do a good job for y'all, that's for sure. And I've heard about that escape room, so I think there may be an effort for some of us to try our luck at that in the near future. So we appreciate the work that y'all have put into that, and we're just excited for the opportunities that y'all have there, thanks to the Clark Foundation. Thank you. All right. It's hard to top that, but maybe the Murray County Education Association can do that for us.
I'm most certainly not going to try to top that.
You're not coming to us with a big check.
Oh, no, not a big check. Not at all. Good evening to the new chairman of the board and other board members tonight, Dr. Marzak. My name is Garland Brown, and I represent the Minority Affairs representative of the MCEA. And I would like to acknowledge the strides made by the Murray County school system in addressing the need for more minority educators in this county. A few weeks ago, I witnessed the retirement of one of my mentors, Ms. Vanita Moore Jernigan. And in her retirement speech, she mentioned the need for more African-American teachers in Murray County. With her words still ringing in my ears, I am here to announce that the MCEA will be actively recruiting on the campuses of Tennessee State University, Alabama A&M, Fisk University, and also Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. I would hope that Murray County Schools will also endorse our efforts in order to recruit more black teachers into the area. Any suggestions are welcome. So thank you tonight, and congratulations to you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Did you also want to go through the Distinguished Teacher Award? Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening. I'm Ann Davis, and I'm one of the co-chairs of our banquet that we have each year. And to give you a little information about these positions are, people are chosen from each school. They have the opportunity to select someone from each school in these categories, and then they have the opportunity to fill out a application form, and we have a panel that goes through and evaluates them, and then they are selected from our county. From that point, then they fill out another form and can be considered for the state. So this year, under Distinguished Education Support Professional, we had Jerry Sturgis from Spring Hill Middle School. Distinguished New Teacher, Elena Corey, Spring Hill Elementary School. Distinguished Classroom Teacher, Kristen Hood, Spring Hill Elementary School. And Distinguished Administrator, Roger White, Central High School. And this panel did not know where these teachers were from, so don't think that Spring Hill, that I teach at, had any influence on this. But we were very proud of the people, and I hope they'll be able to continue and participate next year and receive another award from TEA. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, congratulations to each of the teachers. Our next item is public delegations. If someone could check the sheet and see if we have anybody. Thank you, Mr. Eady. All right, moving on. Staff reporting. I don't know that there's anything right now on that section. Moving on, we've got some consent items. Do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Kinzer and a second from Mr. Moore. Ms. Martin, can you hear us? We can. We can. Would you like to make your vote known on the consent items? Yes. Well, yes. Ms. Martin indicated she would like that to be a yes. So that motion passes, and we'll move on to our committee reports. First item is zoning and facilities. And I think Mr. Beaver handled that particular meeting. These are all recommendations from your committee. Would anybody like to discuss any of those separately, or Mr. Beaver?
Okay, I think there's a couple that we'd like to break out and discuss.
Okay.
And the first one is the MOU. I think there's some corrections, modifications that Stan and myself talked about earlier.
So just that one?
I would like to talk about the painting schedule if we could.
Okay.
Mr. Breeden.
Mr. Breeden.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If the only thing I would add is under the MOU, it had been requested by the board for the city to give specifics on, and I'm looking back to find the spot exactly, for the time frame in which they would have improvements done to the road. And they just sent by their attorney to our attorney, who passed on to me, that time would be 36 months is what they were writing in the contract, if the board will agree to that, to have the improvements done to the road there, Toon Protus Road.
Okay.
On the MOU. Oh, I didn't see you. Here's the lady with all the answers.
Oh, okay. Is there any discussion about the MOU? Mr. Beaver,
I'd just like to make a motion
to approve the
to
MOU?
approve the MOU.
Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Morency. Can we go ahead and vote on that one first? Ms. Martin? Ms. Martin? Ms. Martin, would you like to cast your vote? We'll go ahead and close the voting. I think it would pass regardless of that. All right. I believe, Mr. Moore?
I know somebody's asked to pull out bid 17074. I was going to make a motion to approve the rest of the bids as presented there, with not including bid 17074. So all of the rest of them that have not been approved yet except for 17074.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Moore, a second by Mr. Atkinson, I believe. Is there any discussion on any of the other items? Seeing none, we can vote on that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be items 2 through 9, not including item 7.
Mr. Moore made the motion and Mr. Atkinson seconded. I think if you put it on zoning and facilities, Roman numeral
Okay.
1XA, it should be open.
Okay. I thought I just voted.
Yes, ma'am. All right, it looks like that motion passed. We'll move on to bid number 17074, purchase of system-wide paint. Mr. Moore, did you want to speak on that one?
Me? No.
Oh.
Mr. Beaver.
Mr. Beaver?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a lot of questions about the paint schedule that's, we're buying $40,000 worth of paint, and I think 141, and then I seen in the keys a paint schedule for $784,000, and I just had a lot of questions about that. And Mr. Breed and myself, and so I just asked him to address this because I didn't understand it when I seen it.
In the EMG assessment, they provided for us a schedule to repaint and recommended that we repaint all of our facilities every 7 years. So over that first 7 years, they laid out which facilities they recommended would be painted. Last year, during the summer, we repainted Woodard Elementary School, Mount Pleasant High School. Also, in the first year, they had Spring Hill High School. We started painting, last summer we painted with a summer work crew, which we hired from funds that you provided, from surplus funds. And during the year, we have been painting at Spring Hill High School using a paint crew that we've made up of 2 members of our maintenance staff. So we've had 2 maintenance people painting all year. When we finished the year, we still had some classrooms we had all the classrooms to complete at Spring Hill High School. So at the May meeting, we requested and you funded from our capital funds a summer crew for this summer. And so we are this summer attacking year 2 of that paint schedule, which was to finish Spring Hill High School, the classrooms, paint Santa Fe Unit School, and that is what we think we can get done in the summer. Then the third school that was on the schedule was Howell Elementary, and we plan to start that with the 2 maintenance people as soon as school starts back and try to get that painted through the year. This $40,000 we're requesting is for that paint, to do that work. Now, we also, Mr. Bates, when he was serving in the role of chairman, asked me to provide if we accelerated that schedule and tried to, instead of waiting 7 years, repaint all the schools within 2 years or 3 years. And so I gave him a schedule of what it would take to paint the schools in 2 years and then what it would take to paint the schools in 3 years. I think what he presented, I was not here the night that you all talked about adding those to the keys. That was back in May, and I was gone to a conference. I apologize. But the number that he provided to you for the keys of $784,969 was the first year's cost of that 2-year schedule. Now, it did include Santa Fe and Howell, and we had budgeted those in there to do those in-house, and it was about $93,000 of that, which we will be taking care of with this 40 and this. So we could technically reduce those by that, by those amounts. But the rest of the money was to actually contract out, because if we were going to try to paint everything within a 2-year period, there's no way we could do that with a summer work crew. We would have to contract painting, which would mean we'd be paying much more probably for the labor than doing it in-house. Does that answer your questions, Mr. Beaver?
Mr. Moore, did you have a question? Oh. Sorry, that's why I keep coming to you. So the $40,000 that you're asking for this time is just to paint Santa Fe, Howell, and finish up Spring Hill?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And that is paint only. You've already funded the money
crew.
for the work crew. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Mr. Atkinson?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve, a second by Mr. Moore. I'm sorry, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Although I think in the motion it says CHS, but I think that's actually supposed to be Spring Hill. Spring Hill High School, wasn't it? Thank you, Ms. Martin. All right, that motion passes. Can move on to the policy committee. The first section includes a list of 5 policies that are to be posted for the required amount of time. Those policies include Policy 2.805, Purchasing, Policy 4.302, Field Trips, Policy 4.606, Graduation Activities, Policy 3.210, Naming, renaming of school facilities, and Policy 3.211, New Project Planning. Do we have a...
I move we adopt.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kinzer. So we have a motion from Ms. Kinzer to adopt the 5 policies just listed. And coming out of committee, I don't believe that requires a second, but Mr. Pennings did provide that second if needed. Is there any discussion of any of these policies, or would anyone like to pull out any of the policies? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Ms. Martin, did you want to cast a vote? Ms. Martin is a yes. It looks like that those policies all passed. So we will now move on to Policy 6.200, Attendance, and proposed changes to Policy 6.300 on Discipline. Ms. Kinzer?
I've had an opportunity to try to study these, but I don't think that all of the principals have had time to study both the attendance one and the discipline one. I think that we need to post this for the usual 30 days so that they have a chance to study it and then give us some input about it. Really should have had the policy a while back. If you want to, I have some, in the attendance one, there's a sentence down there that I think needs some clarification. Mass exodus, early dismissal, or late arrival of student in any segment, students shall not be permitted. What if Spring Hill goes to the state tournament in football and baseball and basketball and all of those things that they have done so well in, and the students want to attend? Won't principals won't be able to do that? I'm just saying there needs to be some clarification on that as well, or at least to let the principals some opportunity. I think this posting is, as it appeared on our agenda, is probably the first time this is seen. Also, we can discuss this one if you want to, and then go on to the next one. It doesn't matter. I have some.
Go ahead and mention.
On the discipline policy, I have a real problem with the zero tolerance on drug paraphernalia. Now, understand that I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I think there's many things that can be included as drug paraphernalia, and needles, hypodermics, papers. I think that, and we were given some information about counties that don't make it zero tolerance and counties that do. In Williamson County, it is zero tolerance. It's been zero tolerance here. I don't know if there needs to be some more discretion as far as the principals are concerned, but I do think that we need to post this policy, give the principals at the school an opportunity to be able to meet with and understand the rationale for this. There may be some of the principals here that if they want to comment, and I'd be glad to hear what they have to say. But I think it needs to be posted for 30 days.
So is that your motion?
Yes, I so move.
All right, we have Mr. Atkinson.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion to approve for posting instead of for final adoption, Policy 6.200, attendance, and Policy 6.300, discipline. We have some discussion. Mr. Pennings?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Kinzer. I mean, we have to allow some latitude in there for the principals, so a young child, if he carries his daddy's cigarette rolling papers to school, doesn't get kicked out of school, or and some of this, I'm like Ms. Kinzer. I mean, you want to bring marijuana in here, you'd have to prove to me it was marijuana. I don't know what it looks like, what it smells like, or anything. I've never done it. Don't laugh at me, I'm old, I have never done it. But, and I just think, I think we need to give our principals some latitude, instead of just saying zero tolerance and they can't judge it case by case.
Mr. Moore?
The only thing I would suggest, if the intention is to revisit this, would it not be better served to go ahead and send it back to the policy committee and just revisit it rather than just do the posting? Because otherwise, if we just do a posting, we're going to have to talk about it again at the next meeting. Then I will, if with your blessing, amend the motion to send this back to policy committee.
Second.
All right. Did you get that, Ms. Shirley? Yes, and Mr. Pennings?
Pennings.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Morency, did you have
I
some-
just had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Why were we asked to waive the posting requirement?
We were asked to waive the posting requirement because there are handbooks that were being printed to go along with the changes in this policy. And so that was the request from Dr. Woodard when he presented it to the committee.
So is postponing this going to prevent it from being in the handbook or hold? I mean,
I was told that once it is policy, that most of it would be done online, that parents would be able to view the policies online, that he just had a few books printed just so that we could see. The discussion was made that they have had books printed before, and there's stacks and stacks of them that were never given out, and that probably it would be handled by online. So any changes or anything we could make would be made very easily.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
The only thing I was going to say is I understand that we do normally do the handbooks, and it's nice to have these things ready for students as early as possible. However, I think making sure we have good policy trumps the timing of when it needs to come out. And obviously, it would be effective policy whenever we vote on it. So, and that updates, we update policy year round, and we update what's in the handbook year round. So I don't see a problem with it waiting another month.
All right, with no further discussion, I think we are ready to vote on this amended motion. Ms. Martin, did you want to cast a vote?
I do want to, I need to clarify the motion here. We're only sending back we're not sending both of these back, are we?
No.
Yeah, so we've already,
It was both of them. I think she had an issue with the,
oh, okay, then I just want to, that's fine then. That is I'm good with that.
what was that, Ms. Martin? Yes. Okay, that one she voted no on. She said no. She said yes. Okay, I apologize.
No, she said yes.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. We have you down as a yes. All right. And moving on, our next committee is Community Relations. Ms. Powers is absent, and I actually don't think we had a meeting in this past month. So we'll just wait for her direction on that. And one thing I did want to mention was we discussed at the last marathon committee session that we had the idea of trying to do a work session in July, and that was discussed that we were going to give it a shot for the summer months. So next month we will actually be meeting, I think it was July 13th. And at that time we will be going through the full agenda like we have for tonight as a work session. So 6 o'clock on July 13th. All right. Yes, sir. Moving on to new business, I will turn it over to Dr. Marsack.
Got you. Thank you, ma'am. So what I've included on here is just informational items for the annual superintendent evaluation as by policy and also by my contract. So I did exactly what I did last year. I included a PowerPoint presentation that highlighted each of the areas that gave data so that you would have an indication of what happened throughout the course of this year. In addition, I've also included the evaluation instrument again. And if you'll notice at the end of the evaluation instrument, I had Dr. Preninger, who was our coordinator of data services, to analyze the keys. And she provided the quantitative information for you guys as well about how we did this year with regards to academics with regards to the keys of college and career readiness. So with scrolling down to that, she was able to pull multiple quantitative measures. According to key number 1, performing at a level 2 out of 5, so still some growth to make on key number 1. Key number 2 is performing at a level 4 out of 5, so we made some good growth with mathematics at the 4th grade level this year. Key number 3, with students performing on grade levels of both reading and math by the end of 6th grade, we made some good growth in mathematics as well. We still have some growth to do with language arts and reading, but that performed at a level 3 out of 5. Key number 4, which is students completing Algebra 1 by the end of 8th grade, ended up at a 3 out of 5. Key number 5, with students meeting all of ACT's college readiness benchmarks, that also landed at a 3 out of 5. Key number 6, with financial literacy, that landed at a 3 out of 5. And key number 7, we made some good growth this year with students participating in AP dual enrollment industry cert, work-based learning and military prep by graduation, then it also landed at a 3 out of 5. So we made some good growth this year with regards to the keys of college and career readiness. But the other information is an FYI for you to do the qualitative measures. And I'm not sure if I sent that link out to you guys to do the Google survey. Have I already sent that out? Excellent. Okay, good deal. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Did everyone get those quantitative measures that Dr. Marsack had mentioned? It looked like, if I'm correct, key 1 was a 2, yes. Key 2 was a 4,
yes.
And then keys 3 through 7 are 3s.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's good to see a lot of good progress. I think that, does anybody have any discussions about what Dr. Marsack has presented? Seeing no lights, I would ask, I think as a board, before we had actually in policy set when the board had to do their evaluation of Dr. Marsack, with the new policy, it just says we have to do it annually, I believe. And so the question now is, when do we want to put a deadline on ourselves to get that information in? Nobody wants a deadline?
I would say by the end of July.
By the July board meeting?
By the July board meeting.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to make that a motion, or?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pennings to have board members complete their evaluations, which Dr. Marsack has sent the link out to all board members. Second by Mr. Moore. Any further discussion of that?
You want to say turn in or complete? Because we're doing it online. She has a motion for the board members to turn in superintendent evaluation at the July regular board meeting. Do you want to say turn in or complete?
I would say complete.
Complete instead of turn in?
Reporting
Okay.
all this later.
Got you. Can you please, change that to complete? Thank you.
Ms. Martin, do you know how you would like to vote? She said. Ms. Martin, do you know how you want to vote? She would be a yes. All right. One other kind of housekeeping matter with regards to the evaluation. The information, we did do a teacher survey and got results back from that. I think there were some data in there that was maybe duplicative, that the director had just made us aware that there were some that may have entered things multiple times or may not have entered a code that was provided. If we want to, I guess we had sent out an email after we had issued the survey and said that we would allow them to contact Mr. Beaver if they felt like there was an issue with the way that they had voted. However, teachers haven't had that made available to them. It hasn't been put in our board packet or anything like that. Do we want to make that available in our board packet for the next meeting, and if we do, I think the director would prefer us to take out the ones that there were some issues. Mr. Moore?
You mean the narrative responses from the teachers that were in there, or something else?
I think the full.
Going back to the email, you'll remember there were I think there were 63 data quality errors.
Okay.
There were some people that used the same code twice, even though they had different scores. There were also some people, we did 1,055 surveys, some people put in the 900,000s, and some people also didn't put the full code. So we don't know whether those are Murray County employees or not. We don't know who entered those. And so the question is what do you guys want to do with that erroneous data?
Well, I guess mine was and I'd spoken with, I had a concern with making the data public in the first place. And my approach to that was that when we originally requested this, we had asked for it as a board, as a tool to assist us in the evaluation of the superintendent. In reading through those responses, a whole lot of responses and a whole lot of reading, I have concerns that, and I wanted to be clear on my approach to this was to make sure that the anonymity of the respondents is preserved at all times. And I felt like there are some of the responses in there that if someone were to start digging or picking around in there, they may be able to identify who those people are. And I feel like that starts to, and again, that wasn't the intention of, I think, the board, that wasn't the intention of the superintendent, but personally, I have some concerns that some people may use that information against some people if it were just public knowledge. And I just, that's the way I feel about it. I would rather, I know there's been some concerns by people that responded they wanted to see what was in there. However, I'm comfortable that for what the board asked for, which was a tool to assist us in getting some information. It was very good information. I was glad we were able to get it. I'm just not comfortable just putting that out there for people to look through. I just, because of the exposure I think it places on the people that responded to the survey. I would prefer to keep that as something, a tool for just the board to review and not make that public. But that's just where I stand on it.
Mr. Pennings?
I totally agree with Mr. Moore. That was brought up as a tool for the board, so the board could properly evaluate Dr. Marzak and do it with teacher input so we know how he works with the teachers, because we really don't know and see people here. I don't believe that should be released to the public. That should be an internal paper that we use to evaluate the superintendent.
Ms. Kinzer?
I agree too, and it was 78 pages of comments, and I read them all. But I agree with Mr. Moore that sometimes people made sure that they were somewhat identified by school or by grade content, and I don't think it would be beneficial at all to post it. It's for hours. The comments were all over the place, and we've all read them. Don't worry, we have 78 pages. Believe me, we've read them. So I don't think they need. I think they were for us to be able to access. And
is there anything you want from us, Dr. Marzak, as far as, I mean, knowing we have the highlighted version as far as what to essentially, what there may be some quantitative issues with? Is there any action you want us to take on that, or?
Yeah, and I guess the big question is do you want to keep in the data errors, or you want to take the data errors out? Because I just for my own purposes, I removed them, and it does change some of the scores that come across the top when those 63 measures are removed. So it's just something to consider just for the board to understand.
So the information that you provided, did you just exclude those?
No, I did not yet. No,
Okay.
I gave it to you as I downloaded it.
Okay.
If that's the case, I would ask if you could give us another copy of that with the exclusions in it so that we can just review it and look at the differences. I think that would be appropriate for us to review that way.
Not a problem.
All right. Sounds like we have our direction on the evaluation, and hopefully everybody can get theirs completed by the next board meeting. Moving on, family school partnership facilitating teacher.
This is a new position. We don't have a job description similar to this right now. So what we have two of our Title I schools identified a need, and that's to have a family school partnership person to help take care of getting parents more involved, getting those families more involved in the school, as well as providing some assistance with students inside the school building. This new position does need board approval. Dr. Webb and Ms. Myers, this Highland Park and Cox Middle School, are the two schools who are asking for this particular position, and it will be paid out of Title I funds.
Mr. Pennings?
What do you envision this person doing day to day?
I'm going to.
No job description. Yours is, is kind of vague. What are they going to be doing for the students?
Ms. Myers, Dr. Webb.
Yes, please.
First of all, I personally.
Do you mind coming up to the microphone, Ms. Myers?
Hello. I'm Kelly Myers, principal at Highland Park. This position, actually, believe it or not, we had it at McDowell Elementary 20 years ago. When I first came to Murray County Schools, and McDowell was the first school-wide Title I school. It's kind of like a parent involvement school liaison, and so one extremely important thing that this person will be doing, for me especially at my school, is attendance. helping my attendance clerk, looking at our chronic absenteeism and those tardies, making home visits, finding why they're not there, bringing them to school if she can, or he can, or whoever, but helping us with our attendance. Another huge thing that I want that person to do is that we have an ELL population that is growing extremely. And so I want someone to help me with providing my parents with language acquisition and teaching them English. Even also helping them because many of my parents can't help their kids because they lack education themselves. So I want this person to help me teach our parents to get a GED, to help them do better on the ACT so they can take advantage of that new law or the new provision for adults attending community colleges. I want this person basically helping our parents in any way, form, or fashion so that our students can come to school and be more successful and are not worried about what's going on at home. Another huge thing for us is this person could help with our RTI because they're a Title I teacher. It being a teacher per se at the same time, we still have needs of having more interventionists. And so this person would be doing that. So their day definitely could have some time carved out for working with attendance, some time carved out for doing interventions, some time carved out for doing working with parents and parent workshops, helping them with finding to meet their physical needs, their health needs, just whatever. So I see their day being filled with quite a bit of things. Does that help? Thank you. Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions relating to the description? Ms. Morency?
Is this just one school?
No, ma'am, it's two schools, Cox Middle School and Highland Park.
So it's one position for two schools?
They each have a position in their budgets.
Is this in the budget for any of our other schools if they showed an interest in it?
They have not, they did not put that in their needs assessment for their budgets.
Well, if we don't have the position, they don't know to ask for it. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Well, their needs assessment has to show a need for it.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering, it's two schools. There's two positions,
right.
Two schools. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Mr. Beaver?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, when could we get a job description? I mean, everything that, that's was said there, that's a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And
mm-hmm. That's the job description is the attachment there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So did Ms. Myers and Dr. Webb, those are the two schools that had this in their needs assessment, were they involved in the development then of this job description?
They developed it.
Okay. Sounds like they feel like it meets their needs. Do we have a motion to approve this job description? Motion by Mr. Pennings, second by Ms. Morency. I think Ms. Martin had to leave us, it looked like. I think she X'd us out, so she is no longer in attendance. It looks like that has passed. Moving on to other business. Instructional low bids, who would like to handle those? Mr. Moore?
I was simply going to say, unless somebody has something they specifically want to pull out, which I'm sure there are a few, I was willing to take the rest as a motion for anything that's left and get those off the table, and we can just focus on the ones that people want to talk about.
Are there any that anyone would like to take out. I would like to ask that we remove, for separate discussion, bid 17-523.
Okay.
Are there any others?
Because if there's no others, I would make a motion that we approve, and we're just doing section A right now?
Yes.
Okay, that we would approve items A1, A2, and A4.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Pennings. Any further discussion about any of those items? Mr. Moore and Mr. Pennings.
I do want to clarify the motion there. It should only be 1, 2, and 4, not item 3. 1, 2, and 4. Unless I'm reading something wrong, it's showing 1, 2, 3, and 4.
All right. Moving on, we can discuss bid 17-523 separately. That particular item I know was related to the Dreambox competition that we had this year.
Yes, ma'am.
At the end of the school year. And I know that the principals had selected, this is the prize, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Was there another Dreambox competition? I just had thought that there was a Dreambox competition that they were going to pay for the robot lab.
Yeah, Dreambox ran a competition, and unfortunately what happened is it fell during our spring break, and we knew that our schools would not have a chance against other schools in the country because we would have a week's gap of data. So what we decided to do is launch our own competition. So we started it March 15th, and we ran it all the way into the last week of school. And I reach out to the principals and say, if we're going to do this right, and we're really going to get people involved in this, what's something that you'd be willing to work for? And we launched a Padlet online, and what basically came out is, we're really getting into robotics, we're really getting into kids coding. How about a robotics kit? And so the principal said, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we'd really work hard for that. And as a result of that Dreambox push, that's one of the reasons why we're only one of 20 school districts in all of Canada, America, and Mexico to meet the Dreambox 1 million challenge. And also, according to Dr. Preninger, a lot of our growth in keys number 2, 3, and 4 was also as a result of that competition. Because what our students did is they just didn't participate in Dreambox, they completed lessons. And in order to complete a lesson, you have to complete it with proficiency. And so it really gave us a big boost and a really big push here right at the end of the year. And so we offered this incentive for that school that that completed the most lessons from March 5th all the way out, I believe, until like almost May 15th or May 16th. So this was a strictly internal Murray County Public Schools contest.
Okay.
It wasn't related to Dreambox at all.
Everybody may want to silence their phones. Just teasing. I guess the only question I would have then is if we launch this in March, why are we just now getting the bill for it in June?
What we did is we worked with Robot Lab, and we would have brought this to the May meeting, but we wanted to make sure everything was correct and everything was right, and we got that back, and it was after the deadline for the May meeting, so now we're bringing it to the June meeting.
Mr. Moore.
I think, I don't know, I guess Ms. Parker's point is it would have been nice before we agree we're going to do a prize for a project that we would have approved the purchase of the prize and known about the project.
Good point.
Did I get
Not
straight to
considering
it
that
for
thing.
that?
Good point.
And that's a little troublesome to me. And not that I have a problem with this, it's just, it would have been nice to know what we were doing before we've agreed to do a prize and held a contest, and now we're being asked to pay for it after the fact.
Good point. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this item?
I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve the robot lab by Mr. Moore and a second by Mr. Pennings. All right, it looks like that motion did pass. I would just like to say for my own purposes that in the future, I'm probably going to vote no for any contest items that aren't approved ahead of time. I just hope that we're not going to go out and tell kids, we're going to give you this prize, and then it comes to the board 3 months after the contest started. That's just me personally, but that's how I would be voting in the future. So I just hope that we try to get the prize approved by the board in advance of the competition.
So noted, and we will do that for future contests.
Thank you, Dr.
You're
Marzak.
welcome.
All right, moving on. Operations, low bids, purchases over 10,000. Is there anything that anybody would like to pull out separately, or Mr. Moore?
Oh, I did have a question about item number 4 on the replacement bus.
Yes, sir.
So reading through there, this is the one that was in an accident. I guess I have trouble with the fact that we are coming out behind when somebody wrecked our bus.
The problem that we have is the bus was a 12-year-old bus.
Okay.
And it was due to be replaced 3 years from now. So what we got was the value for, the only problem is we can't go buy a 12-year-old bus. So we're buying a new bus to replace the 3. Now, what will happen is that bus will not have to be replaced in 3 years like the 12-year-old bus would have to be. But we're still down an inventory one bus, which we need to.
And that's not, I mean, again, maybe it's my ignorance here. I would think that would be a negotiating tool as we work with insurance companies on being made whole after we've been.
I've talked with other school
our
districts about that, and some have written in that they can get that for the first 3 years or 5 years, but I haven't found an insurance company that will buy you a brand new bus if you wreck a 12-year-old bus.
And I guess I don't mean, I would think again, maybe I'm not in the auto insurance thing here, but it would seem like the other party would be responsible for making us whole here, because we are not being made whole.
Yeah, and my experience in the insurance business, and I did spend 17 years working in the insurance industry, is with automobiles, you always get you never get a new car when you wreck your car. If you've got a 5-year-old car, you get they will replace it with a 5-year-old car.
Somewhere more than a quarter of the value of what we're having to replace, I guess would be I would be.
And again, the challenge for us is it's a 12-year-old bus that we're having to replace.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know any other explaining other than it's just that's what the insurance company.
I guess my point would be we should be arguing with the other party's insurance about making us whole in this endeavor.
Yeah, I understand.
Do we have a motion to approve in section 11B, 1, 2, or I'm sorry, 1, 3, 4, and 5?
I'd make that motion.
All right. We have a motion to approve all items, I guess essentially under section 11B. I think item 2 is just an FYI. That motion was by Mr. Moore. Second was by Ms. Kinzer. Any other discussion? All right, it looks like that motion did pass. Moving on to item 11C. Is there any discussion or any questions about the transfer? Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I did have some questions about, I mean, we haven't done this very often. I think there was a couple of years ago we talked about giving a bus to somebody else. What, is this normal that somebody just asks for a bus and we don't have use for it, so we just give it away? I thought we were liquidating these through the auctions.
We have liquidated. We have had some situations. We are allowed under the rules to give it to another governmental agency. We did give a bus, I think, a few years ago to the Sheriff's Department that they use for training. So this is not the first time we've done this. That one of our surplus buses that we're going to sell to the Sheriff's Department, we were getting ready to sell. We have not had this request often, but we did have that precedent that was set. The other thing, the request came to us. We felt like it would be a very goodwill gesture for us in two ways. One is the county is the one who's been funding these buses. They've allowed us, once they funded them and we sell them, not to give the money back. We've been keeping the money. I have heard in a county commission meeting, so, well, what happens to that money when you all sell it? We've just kept it. So that's the first part of that. Second one is the highway department has been very helpful to us in several situations where we've needed help. They do some work for us without charging us labor. We pay for the fuel for their vehicles and the gravel or supplies they use when we've done some road repair and things on school property. So we felt like it was a goodwill gesture. It's a local county agency, and so we felt it's like the right thing to do.
Just I had one question on that, and I think that's some valid points on that. What's the approximate, if I'm recalling correctly from my numbers, these things sell pretty inexpensively.
Yeah, usually between about $2,500 and $5,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
So that's what we would estimate this to be?
Yes, sir.
And I don't necessarily have a problem with this request. I just, if we're going to, it's always nice to kind of have an idea of what we're giving away. In the future, it may be nice to kind of put a ballpark value on what we're giving away so that we can all be aware that we're not giving away a $30,000 thing. We're giving away roughly a $2,000.
I can't remember us selling any for more than $5,000.
That's what I think I recall the same thing. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no lights, do we have a motion to approve this transfer? Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Pennings. All right, it looks like that motion did pass. Moving on, advanced placement classes. Is there anyone that wants to, anybody that has any questions related to what was in the packet?
I move we accept it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? And we can get into some discussion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Kinzer, second by Mr. Moore, and it looks like we've got some lights on, so Mr. Moore?
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is in the future, if we could get this kind of put together in some kind of spreadsheet format so we can look at what's going on at all the schools at one time rather than flipping through letters. Sure. It would just be easier to kind of look at what.
I think it was on the other agenda.
Did I miss it?
It was on the email that I sent.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not in the agenda. It's in another document. Thank you.
But we can include that next time.
Mr. Pennings?
How's this work in with our budget?
Fine, we're okay.
Thank you.
All right, so seeing no other lights, looks like we were ready to vote on this. All right, it looks like that motion did pass. Moving on, parking and consumable fees. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
I missed a few meetings. I'm making up for it. Looking these over, I'm going to complain about this like I have for the last 3 years in a row. It still seems just a couple of things on that. It still seems like it's kind of all over the place. And I still have a problem with the parking fee that's not really for parking, but it kind of is for parking stickers, and then it's for other stuff too. And maybe I misunderstand it. It seems like we would, with the cost of buses, with the cost of the logistics of busing, that it would be better to have more young adults driving if we've got the room for them, rather than trying to put fees on it to, I don't know, seemingly restrict it. Or, and again, we got several of these that are, some of them charging $10, some are charging $20. I was really hoping we would get to a point where it was kind of a system-wide thing of what we're doing as far as pricing that would make a little more sense to me.
Mr. Pennings?
Well, I agree with Mr. Moore. We were both hoping that we could get to a system-wide thing. And talking to Mr. Wright, one of the reasons for charging a parking fee is because if you have a parking lot that is striped and with numbers, and the student gets a number, there's a lot less arguments out in the parking lot and squabbles. You're in my parking space, no, you're in my parking space, and it keeps down a lot of trouble. So that's one reason. But I am with Mr. Moore. I was kind of hoping that we could kind of make everything equal.
I am in complete and total agreement with Mr. Moore and Mr. Pennings. This has been something that I know since I've been on the board. This is, I think, this is the second or third year that we've gotten a vote on it, and every year it's been something different. And I'm especially curious about, it looks like, for example, at Hampshire, there's a consumable fee that's K through 12. But then I know in the next item, we've got a consumable fee for K through 4 that's $25. So I don't understand why a child that goes to first grade at Woodard would pay $25 and a child that goes to Hampshire would pay $20 for, I would assume, the same type of consumables.
We have principals in the room that work collaboratively on this, so they're prepared to answer questions.
Okay.
Come on. Yeah, go ahead and go to the podium, please. Thank you, Ms. Gaffney.
The consumable fee is $20, and then there's a $5 agenda book fee. So it will be $25 for us, but we just separated consumable fee $20, $5 agenda book.
Okay, that's not what your letter says, unfortunately.
That's what it should say.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe we might need to send some of these back or amend them, or because that's not consistent with what was in our packet. Ms. Morency, did you have a question?
I did. I'm a little confused about, because the next thing we're going to look at is the fee waivers, and they also have a consumable fee in there that we're waiving. So are they required to pay it and then we waive it, or I'm just a little confused because I don't know how that works.
Do you want to talk fee waiver now, or you want to wait till the next item? Because fee waiver.
Is it the same consumable?
No.
That we're
No.
looking at here that we're going to waive?
No, fee waiver is money that the federal government gives us to replace for students in poverty that cannot afford the consumables. So we provide it for them.
So if I'm at Mount Pleasant High School and there's a $20 consumable fee that we have, and I can't pay it, then it is in the waivers? Is that correct?
Do you want to address it?
The law basically states we cannot charge students for we can assess fees, but we can't make students pay them. So when that law was passed some time ago, the board put a line in the budget to try to compensate schools for those instances. Because the majority of the time, people, whether they're free or reduced, they pay their fees. They go ahead and pay their fees. But if they don't, we can't make them pay them. We can't withhold books or materials. And so once schools, go ahead and issue those, or they buy it out of school funds, then they send us a report of, here's what I purchased, this student's free and reduced, they did not pay their fees, and then we reimburse them that amount.
Okay, I guess my question is, when we're looking at parking and consumable fees, the parking is never waived, correct?
No.
The parking
No.
fee is not waived.
Right.
But this consumable fee that we're looking at can be waived.
Certain portions of it can be waived, yes.
If they meet the requirements,
Right,
that
right.
so that $20 or whatever it is consumable
Right.
fee can be waived later on.
Right.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Can any of the principals explain, particularly, I guess, what we're looking at is high school, unit school, and it's $10 for parking, $20 for parking in some places. I guess we all just thought that y'all were going to get together and come up with one price for parking, and I think that was our hope, and we're still not there. Is there a justification?
I'd go beyond hope. I recall distinct discussions that
High school principal?
that's what we wanted.
Looks like you get to be it, Ms. Wiley.
We did get together and discuss parking fees. I thought that we came up with an agreement. Some schools do charge 10, some schools do charge 20. That's right. We have paid for striping. We have paid for numbering. And we also pay for the placards that they hang in their car windows or on their rearview mirrors, so that we can easily identify them if we need to ask them to move their vehicle, or if the drug dogs come to schools for safety concerns. Now, I know what I spend my parking fees on. It goes for parking. It goes for the maintenance of the parking lot. It goes for signs that we may need to post around our campus for safety. It's those kinds of things. As far as other principals charging $10 and us charging $20, I can't really answer that. That's what we have done. If there's others.
I think we're a $10 school. And we do the place cards that they put in their car. We do the restriping, putting the numbers on the ground, but that's all we need to do. So,
And our schools are different sizes too. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a different number of students who are using our facilities, and different numbers of teachers that are using our facilities.
Yeah.
So some of our campuses are larger, some of them are smaller. I mean, that's the only thing that I can come up with as to why we might need to charge something different.
I don't want to charge something that we don't need. And our parking lot is much smaller than the rest of the parking lots.
Right. Going back to the consumable fee, though, as an example, if it's $20, if I am a 12th grader at either one of your schools, I'm going to pay 20 or 25 with the assignment books at both of your schools. But if I go to Central, or I think Mount Pleasant, or I think Spring Hill High School, then I'm only going to pay $10 as a 12th grader. What's the difference in the consumables that are going to be offered at your school that's going to make it $10 more valuable?
With the consumables, and we have a list of, and I didn't bring the list, but we have a list of items that we do purchase with the consumables. One is stamps, because we actually send out attendance. We stay on top of our attendance. We send out letters to parents anytime, whether it's excused or unexcused. They get to 3 absences and then 5 absences, we're sending letters out. Because we stay on top of it, keep parents informed, and so we do need extra funding. We send paper, like, when I say paper, we send copies of a lot of information to parents. So that's I know those were two things on there. Can't think of anything else.
And I understand that, but at the same time, if you're sending it out, I would assume that the other schools are sending them out too.
I
mean, if you're at.
Well, I don't know how other schools do their attendance.
Okay.
Everyone does a different, we go above and beyond with attendance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Everyone doesn't do that at 3.
Okay.
We mailed out report cards this year since we didn't have an end-of-the-year report card day. We wound up mailing our report cards out, and we paid for that. So we bought envelopes, we bought labels for each of our students, and also the postage. So that was an added expense for us. We stock a TWA room, which allows the teachers to come and get supplies. They come and get staples. They come and get dry erase markers. They get construction paper. They get all of the materials that they need from that room, and that's what a lot of our money goes toward, is to provide the teachers with the day-to-day resources that they need to educate our kids.
Mr. Moore.
Okay. I will go back to our discussions from last year and the year before that and the year before that. I understand there's differences. I think my main issue all along has been, and what you just said about having to, I mean, there's in my mind, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, it ends up being a slush fund for all kinds of stuff. Well, you pretty much just described that it is, you just used it to mail out report cards, which wasn't intended at the beginning of the year, but ended up, that's what it was used for. And I understand that happens. But I've always had a problem with, when we talk about striping parking lots, and I've said this for several years in a row, that's something the district should be taking care of, because those are our parking lots. And I see no reason why the school should be having to charge students to park there a fee. Now, I do understand the placards or whatever method is used to identify the cars. That makes sense. That's a logical fee to cover the cost of what that is. But we're maintaining the parking lots here as a district. We're paving them. We're supposed to be doing those things, and I see no reason why that should be coming out of the students' fees to park a car. It makes no sense to me. And I'm not asking you to answer that. This is amongst ourselves. And I've been saying that for several years, and I think that was the intention when we talked about this last year and the year before, that we would get away from this kind of thing and separate these things, because these, again, striping parking lots is not something the principal should have to worry about, any more than you should have to worry about just saying, hey, these things need to be done and maintained, much less a leak in the roof. It's just a maintenance item. And you shouldn't be having to figure out fee structures to pay for a leaky roof, much less striping a parking lot.
I will say that last summer, our parking lot was resurfaced and it was restriped through the board. So that is greatly appreciated, but that was last year, and that was the first time that I've witnessed that happen.
And that's good. Again, it further reinforces that these really aren't to pay for parking lot maintenance fees.
Another
That's
thing.
then, again, and this is I just wish we would get to the point where we just charge what we need to charge for these fees and separate these things out. And I've still got a problem with we call it a parking ID tag, and several schools, most of them, have this student achievement rewards thing in there. There's a couple of those, and there's several different schools that have different other things that money is used for. Because you can't tell me that it's only used for just parking. I think we all know that some of these fees end up getting used for other things, like postage.
That's consumable. That's
again,
not
but that
parking.
wasn't planned at the beginning of the year, was it?
It was for me, because last year we cut out report card day as well. And so we ran into an issue of parents needing to get the report cards. And we don't have time at the end of the year, if we give exams, to get grades done, get them printed, and get them in the kids' hands before they leave school.
So that was
it
built
was
into
part
what you,
of
okay,
my
then
plan.
that I
Yes,
understand
sir.
that. That does make sense. So if that's the way you're budgeting for it. But again, my complaint all along, and I think the board, was that we should be separating these things out. Parking should be whatever the cost to go with parking, not to repair or maintain the parking lots. That's our job to take care of that. And fees, I would really like it to, again, for the third year in a row, to get these things where we're not getting a list of every school that just chooses a different fee structure. If we could just get a fee structure that works, stick with it, and move on.
Ms. Kinzer?
Well, every school's a different size. It is physically different. Parking lots are different. Quite frankly, if you didn't have a parking fee and a parking pass at Central High School in the parking lot, it would be absolute chaos. in the parking. I mean, that was one of the best things they did. A consumable, if I remember when I was teaching, is there was always paper for the copy machine. There were supplies that we needed that we didn't have to purchase ourselves. And that's what I've always thought. Consumables are a great big sort of thing. I personally think we're trying to micromanage to some degree. If these principals have told us what they need, I was here, wasn't on the board, but I was present when you all had this discussion last year. And you told them to make the fee appropriate to what they use it for. And if it's $20 and they are using it for the signs and they say that, then I don't have a problem with it being different at a different school where there's a large parking area, small parking area. Your high school students, you know, junior, you have a small high school. So you don't have that many in cars. You have your staff, of course. So I think there is a difference, and I think in this particular regard, I think that it should be, the principals should be no, because the board told them, don't come up with a fee that you can't back up. And y'all have met and discussed it, okay? I don't have a problem with it.
Mr. Pennings? Okay.
I move we accept whatever this is.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Ms. Kathy, yours didn't include the $5 agenda item in your letter. Do you want that included?
I think it's in the fees.
It's in the other fees.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in
When
the
I went
other
back to
fees?
my seat, I thought
Okay.
it's in the fees.
Okay. So we have a motion by Ms. Kinzer, a second by Mr. Pennings. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All right, it looks like that motion did pass. Moving on, items to be considered for fee waiver. Any discussion or questions related to that? Motion to approve the fee waivers. Second by Mr. Pennings or Mr. Atkinson. Seeing no lights, I think we're ready to vote. It looks like that motion did pass. We'll move on to an update on K2 resources. Can you see that number? 3281.
Where to go? Sorry about that. Good evening. I'm here to I'll give you a short update on our K through 2 instructional resources. As you asked for us to get that on last week. I want to take some time just to outline our current landscape for just to give you kind of a picture of some of the things that impact instructional resources. This year, we are in the process of implementing new standards for language arts and reading. We have, I guess, been in a cycle for about the last 10 years of about having standards being revised or being updated every time. And just to what happens with that is when we update standards, we go through a process of working with teachers in their teams or their grade levels to deconstruct the standards, really figure out what they mean, help them to understand the standards, and then from there, we go forward and connect how we're going to teach those standards, and we connect those resources. As we looked at the new standards this spring, we started that process with teachers. First, we spent some time with principals and assistant principals and our PLC coaches, retraining them on that process of standards deconstruction, went through the process, and they, in turn, I think we have another training actually scheduled next week, right, with our coaches to do some more standards deconstruction. So what will happen is they'll train those, they'll go back to their schools as the year starts, and they'll deconstruct those standards, and then we'll go back and tie in resources. So that's kind of the process of how we connect resources to help teachers, to help them do their job, so to speak. So it's we try to make it a teacher-driven process so that we ensure that, we try to get them the right things. Another thing, as you know, we're implementing problem-based learning into our system. That's more about where we engage students, try to use the curiosity or the interest of students to learn. So that's a way that we engage them and we go about that. So as a part of that, sometimes when you're it may cause you to try to look at a lot of resources because, in a case you don't know what children are interested in. So you've got that going on, and so, you got the idea of, you kind of look at what children are interested in, then you try to gather those resources, try to use literacy resources, those things like that, to support that. And so that process kind of takes place as, grade levels plan, as they work together, they look at those student interests. Kind of in a short version, but that's kind of what happens. So you look at student interests, you kind of make those learning plans, you gather those resources, then you're able to produce those lessons. And that gets away from more of the traditional, everybody's in the seats, I'm teaching one lesson. Teachers, learn about the standards, they know the grade level expectations, they try to build lessons around those student interests, but it becomes more small group lessons with smaller amounts of resources rather than I'm teaching one class at one time. There may be some times where it may be across the class weakness where they'll teach a whole group, but typically it's more about doing the reading block or doing the math, small group learning, looking at students where they are, and then teaching them there. And then, of course, as you know, we're integrating one-to-one devices. We're in the process of that. Which brings on the accessing content through digital content. So we're looking at ways, and there's kind of a balance here where we're looking at ways to access content digitally, where students don't have to have less books, those things like that. As you know, if we think about textbook companies, when we first started, when digital literacy and implementing that, a lot of textbook companies, they still produce textbooks, but they also produce digitally. But, essentially it was like a PDF that you could buy, but it's probably about the same price. I think a lot of schools didn't like that because it wasn't interactive. Of course, Dr. Marzak came last year and kind of brought on an interest in discovery where we have some interactive content where it's live, it's current, and so, thus last year you voted and we implemented that. So now we're in the process of, we've done some training with that this year. We're still unpacking discovery. There are lots of, besides just science and social studies, there are lots of content that discovery can do. So I say that to say we're in that balance of trying to implement this digital literacy, but at the same time, we're still trying to honor teachers who still want to use small groups with trade books. We're still trying to keep that balance and trying to maintain that. So just wanted to talk to you just a little bit about that landscape. Any questions there? Moving forward with the plan. So as you know, principals came forward they met with their school teams, they came up with resources, and they presented those resources in the Keys budget presentation and their budget presentations. They presented those, and some of those things, if we could put it in the budget, we did. If we didn't, we put it in the Keys budget for approval. So we had that process. you ask us to look specifically at K through 2. So right before school's out, we ask principals to gather those specific resources, and we're in the process of refining that list. I think you did we email that list out to them, or do I? We have the list where schools ask for. We ask specifically K through 2 teachers what you needed for to support instruction. We got a hodgepodge of different things. As we were doing that, and we kind of knew that's what would happen based on, as we're implementing one-to-one and problem-based learning, we knew we would get a hodgepodge of things. So at the same time, we engaged principals and asked them to give us a teacher who's willing to volunteer and come in so we can sit down and have a meeting with those teachers. That includes the teachers, Ms. Miller, principal, I think Marissa Massey is going to lead that, and some of the other curriculum and instruction staff. And we're actually going to look at those lists and try to come up with, hey, what are some things that we really need to, we're going to review the resources that we have, and that's going to include, we've been gathering some resources based on some things that might be good. We've also going to look at the additional resources that are available in Discovery and those things like that. We're going to share those with teachers. We're going to review that input that we have from teachers. We're going to develop a prioritized list of resources to be purchased, and then we're going to try to purchase those resources. As you know, are we going to please everybody when you buy, when you try to buy at bulk? Sometimes it's not always what the teacher wants, but we're going to try to look at it both ways. Maybe we can buy this school exactly what they want because that's what they want. But I think we'll look at those lists, try to price them, and then try to come up with, what's the best way to move forward.
So Scott, kind of looking down at the bottom where you're talking about June 29th and complete those purchases in July. So your goal is either before the beginning of school or probably within the first week of school, having those supplies in teachers' hands
we hope. Yes.
For
Yes.
classroom use. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Let me just, I know K through 2 is something that's near and dear to my heart. The second slide that you showed us talked about one-to-one integration. And I went back and I pulled up the diploma strategic objective, and I happen to serve on that committee, and it says MCPS will provide equitable and individualized opportunities for students to enhance learning through technology, and it says place technology in the hands of all students for use in and out of school. So we've already changed from that because K through 2 is not going to get to take Chromebooks home, as I understand it, and we don't have enough Chromebooks for all of K through 2, and that's why in my mind, there's some concern from my standpoint about what resources are available. And I think it's great to try to get that input from the teachers, and I appreciate that you did that. I will say I think it came kind of late in the school year, and so maybe I don't know that you maybe got the participation that you needed from all K through 2 teachers. So I hope principals that are out there reaching out to their teachers to make sure that they've got the input that they need. And then I know what you mean as far as not being able to please everybody, and I certainly understand that. But one of the concerns that was raised in our elementary roundtable was this transient population that we have in Murray County. And so if you've got one school that's teaching a standard with resource A and another school that's teaching it with resource B, and that child moves between schools, there just doesn't seem like there's a lot of consistency in our elementary education at this point, and that's a little concerning to me. Just because you want those kids to not just have to pick up and learn from a new book, in my opinion. And then this, if we are moving towards digital learning, these teachers have to have time. I think there are a lot of resources that are out there, but when you've got a room full of kindergartners, good luck getting on the computer and trying to find some resources. And, that's something that I think we really are lacking. And I don't know if it's an area that principals have come up with the solution for, or central offices come up with the solution for, as far as these are the standards we're teaching, these are some resources that we have available. I know y'all collaborate all the time. I wish that it was a little bit more streamlined. And And this is not to me. I hope we're getting there, but that's ultimately what I want to see with K through 2 resources going forward. I don't know if anyone has anything else. All right. Thank you, Mr. Gaines. All right, it looks like we're now ready for finance. I think first would be our budget amendments. Do you want to?
We can go through them one by one. I think there's probably two that we'll need to discuss, so.
Okay. Do you want to pull out those two? And
Okay. If you go to budget amendment 4586.
That's the one I had up.
All right.
In probably January, when we started producing financials again, there was when we implemented Skyward, at the time we were paying our insurance and booking our insurance on a month lag. So when we paid an invoice for medical insurance and dental insurance, when we paid that bill, it was for the previous month. So we were always paying it and booking the expense on a month lag. In December, we turned on a feature in Skyward called insurance tracking, where at the time that the payroll runs, that insurance books the expense at that time. So in the month of December, there was 2 months worth of expense booked. We didn't pay 2 months, but there was 2 months worth of expense booked. For budgeting purposes at that point, I took that double booking, pulled one of those out, and moved it down into the finance budget so that all the other departments, when they looked across the board, they could see 12 months worth of expense. As we've gone through our final budget cleanup, and this is actually related to the other amendment, we've determined that, we wanted to not have an audit finding and be able to cover that negative amount that's sitting in the finance department. So we are moving money from fund balance down to cover that expense. And this is the amount that's been shown on the financials every month since January. And it's basically 1 month of medical and dental insurance.
But there's nothing to pay. We
It's-
don't owe a bill.
It's not,
This is
it's
just
not
to
it's not
cover.
cash at all, no.
Gotcha.
any questions on that one? All right. On to the next one.
And then the next one is 4587. This is shortly after we ran the 615 payroll, we sat down and made one last attempt in preparation for year end to clean up all of our line items within the budget to try to avoid audit findings. And this is the result of that. So this is a top to bottom, line item by line item, both salary, benefits, and all the other lines to try to get those as correct as we can for year end. So this budget amendment is the result of that. This is using some of the funds that you approved last month when we made the $1.9 million entry from fund balance into the GP budget. So this is kind of using part of that to distribute those funds around. So this should get us to a place at the end of the year, if we've calculated correctly, where we've got every line item covered.
Any questions?
There's no detailed explanation. Are you going to fill that in, or?
At the bottom?
Mm-hmm. It's the only one that doesn't have any kind of explanation to it before you take it to the commission.
Right, we can do that.
Do we have a motion to approve the budget amendments? We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Atkinson. Any further discussion? Seeing no lights. This would be to approve budget amendment 4580, 4581, 4582, 4583, 4584, 4586, 85, 86, 87, and 88. Looks like that passed. Moving on to the expenditures report.
And I think the order may be a little out on there. If you want to go to the summary
Okay.
financials, this is a snapshot of where we are as of the end of May. This has all the budget amendments in it related that was passed last month that went through County Commission. One change that I did this month, we took out the percentage of the year. I think I'd been showing on a month-to-month basis. We were 11/12 through the year, so we should be at this percentage. As you start looking at this, with paying teachers 10-month salary over 12 months, it kind of, different line items are at different parts of the year. So if you're in finance, our payroll's done at 6/30. If you're a teacher, your payroll still goes into July and gets posted back to June. So I took that out, but other than that, this is the normal financials that we've been showing each month.
Ms. Kinzer?
I just have a couple of questions, maybe they're just comments, but on 72320, which is Dr. Marzak's salary, I know in the fall we extended his contract and gave him a raise, but it says 181,350. Did he also get the $1,350 that were given to staff, or?
No. Are you looking at the detail?
I'm looking at 72320
It's on the expenditure report.
on the expenditure report.
Okay. I can go pull that if you want me to.
Do you see what do you see it? It's 72320. 181,350 budgeted.
Can we pull up the expenditure report and maybe that way everyone can see it on the screen?
The expenditure.
So I think it's probably hard for Mr. Parliament to do that off of
I
memory.
can go grab my laptop if you want.
Okay. Expenditure report. It's page 9. Going. Keep going.
Without being able to drill down, I'm not sure what that 1,350 is at this point.
I think 1350.
But regardless, we'll look at it and fix it. It shouldn't be there. And I don't remember, because I've had Mr. Parliament pull my budget multiple times to make sure I'm within thresholds, and it's always been 180. So
And
we'll
if-
fix that.
Yeah, and if there's a we can just reclass that. That would be a simple journal entry. That wouldn't be a budget amendment that needed to go through, so.
Okay, while we're on revenues, not revenue, expenditures, one more question.
Mhm.
If you go to 73300, community services, who is a supervisor director? And what do they do?
Yeah, that's.
That's actually where we get from the state, the Family Resource Center grant, and that's where we classify it at. So it's actually, it's 88,000, is that what it is?
I was looking at the 9,000, supervisor director 9,000.
The actual, no, that's not it. I have to do that. Yeah.
You've got more than one family resource center teacher, don't we?
We have 3, but they don't make up, they're, yeah.
So the 9,000 is,
He's gonna drill down and we'll.
Okay.
I thought so. Yeah, I can see a name. I don't know who it is. It's the grant, 21st Century Grant. It's the 21st Century Grant. That's
Okay.
for the additional money she gets to manage that grant. There's one person that gets that additional money to manage the 21st Century Grant for our after-school programs at Riverside, Highland, Mount Pleasant. And she gets those additional funds for managing that grant as a part of that 21st Century. I think it's 21st Century Grant.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We have an after-school program at each of those schools?
I'm
Is that what you, did you say we have an after-school program at each of those schools?
Highland Park, Riverside. It's an after-school program. It's 21st Century Grant.
Is that different from Boys and Girls Club? It's
Yes.
another type of,
Yeah, it's
okay,
another
after
grant.
school,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sounds good.
I remember in a other meeting, Ms. Parker talking about how difficult it was finding the time to look at all of these things, and it is difficult when you get them that day,
Right.
you know.
And I apologize for that. This has kind of been a little bit of a month and a half out of the ordinary to try to get everything cleaned up, running up against month end. But we will be back on schedule starting July.
Any other questions on the expenditures? Move on to fund balance projection. Any questions on that? I did have one question. I don't know if there's a way that you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If I look at the top part, you've got 12,000, and then you take 7,000 out, and then the unassigned portion as of 7/1/16 is about 5.4 million.
Right.
Less the mandated reserve, and you come up with an available fund balance of 2.6. But then when you go to B, your fund balance starts at 12.5.
Right.
Why does it not start at 5.4?
The 12.5 was the beginning balance for the year. So you're looking at an ending balance from last year and a beginning balance for this year.
So how do we, what about the assigned portion that's in the top part? How are you accounting for that?
The assigned portion, that's the conversation that I've had with the state auditors, and there's about $2 million of that assigned portion that should not have been there, that really should be part of the unassigned. So that kind of changes that number a little bit. And they've suggested that we just make a journal entry to move that down, and I'm going to do that prior to year end. What I was trying to do here is just basically show where we were at as of 6/30/16 just to end the year, and then potential where we're at this year. So that's the bottom section of that.
So from the assigned portion though, the 7.7 million, you're
Right.
saying about 2 million of that should be taken.
Should be unassigned.
Should be unassigned.
Correct.
So then where's the 5 million that is assigned in the bottom portion?
It's not there anymore because we're projecting our fund balance as of 7/1 of 17. So the assigned would go away until we put fund balance, keys, things like that in there for next year. So let's just say with the budget that we have out there now, it's a $5.4 or $5.8 million, then we would commit that to keys purchases out of that total fund balance. But those would be decisions that are made as of 7/1 to say, these are the monies that we're carving out of that total amount at that point.
But at the top, you've got a signed portion as of 7/1/16. So those
Right.
are keys that we paid for this year.
Correct. And this is leftover, right. That's what was carved out for this year.
Right.
And there's about $2 million of that 7 that should not have been in there.
But there's still 5 million that should be in there.
Correct.
But that's not showing up in your deductions on the bottom half.
Because that's already, but I'm just trying to show you a projection at the bottom half. So I'm not pulling out what was already in there for this year.
So,
This-
but what I'm
this is a
saying is
net
that
of-
9 million, does that need to be discounted 5 million then?
No, because this is a net effect of the activity for the year. So if you look at our fund balance right now, you have a beginning balance of 12,509,000. And if you take out the 2.772, because what I'm basically saying is we've spent the money that we've earmarked for keys and all of the other things at this point.
But you didn't take that out of the fund balance as of 7/1/16 is what I'm saying. I mean, that 5 million that you're saying should have been paid, that gets paid essentially sometime during this year, right? I
Right.
mean, that's an expenditure from fund balance, so it would decrease that 12 million by 5 million.
The way the system calculates it, I mean, it gives you your starting balance, and as things happen throughout the year, as you're spending that money, whether it be out of fund balance or through your GP budget, it gives you that running total for the year. So basically, our fund balance as of May 31st is about $14 or $15 million on the books. And that's with what we've spent for the keys and other things coming out of that.
But you're showing 9 million here.
Right, because I've deducted 4.4 million for expense that's going to get paid in July that has not happened yet. So that's estimating the expense for the teacher payroll in July that hasn't hit yet, that we haven't booked. So that's going to reduce that $15 million. We know that's.
Right. And why is it exactly that you say that estimated expense is going to fluctuate? Is that the 4.4 that?
Right, that's what I'm trying to estimate based upon the 615 payroll. That's the amount of the 2 payrolls that we're going to run in July that will be posted back into June.
Why would you think that would fluctuate? Do we not know how much?
Because
we
it's
pay
not
in
an
payroll?
exact amount. I mean, I tried to go through and pull an exact amount, and it's a rounding. It's pretty close.
Okay. But, so it's not really going to fluctuate, it's just you rounded here
Right,
when you gave us
right,
the number?
right.
Okay. Any other questions on the fund balance? I will say I still don't understand the 5 million, so you may just have to educate me after the
Okay.
meeting. I don't want to keep us here any longer. Any discussion on the historical summary, current summary revenue report? Seeing none, we've got some FYI items there. Congratulations to the schools that are getting grants. That's always welcome to see that added to our revenue report. And then we'll move on to announcements and communications. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. So looking at the agenda, reminders of scheduled meetings and closings. Thursday, June 29th, we do have a county commission special called meeting at 4:30. Monday, July 3rd, there's a community relations. No, that's not correct because we've moved all that to July 13th, correct? So
Correct.
please strike Monday, July 3rd. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend. Don't have to come in for a meeting the night before fireworks. July 13th, that will be a work session of the school board. Wednesday, July 26th is an admin in service, so is the 27th. Thursday, July 27th, we have a regular board meeting here at 6 o'clock. Friday, July 28th is in-service. Monday, July 31st is teacher prep, and already Tuesday, August 1st is the first full day of school. I'll let that set in for a second. Already. Wednesday, August 2nd is a PD day, no school, and Thursday, August 3rd, we're right back. That's all we have, Madam Chairman.
Sounds good. I think we did amend the agenda to talk about the budget meeting.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I'm
Yeah, we did
sorry.
have some, yeah. Jim, you want to chime in?
Sorry about that. Mr. Bennings?
Well, from what I get from commissioners that I've talked to and that have called me, our budget is not going to be passed, period. They will not pass a budget that has an increase in maintenance of effort. They agree that we need a new build new school in
Spring Hill.
Spring
Spring
Hill,
Hill.
and they're ready to fund that. I haven't got any real decision on the buses yet. But they said if we insist on sending our budget the way it is, they just will not hear the budget. And if we don't have a budget passed by August 31st, we automatically revert back to last year's maintenance of effort. That's what the commissioners have told me. Dr. Marzak has had some conversations with commissioners too.
Yes. Yesterday morning, I had a really good meeting with Scott Sumner's the chairman of the Budget Committee. It was a really good meeting. We met for about 2 hours. He sees the same perspective that there is a need to build in the Spring Hill section. He sees the dirt being moved. He lives in the Spring Hill Kedron Road area, so he knows the growth that's coming to Spring Hill and what we do need to do. He does, in talking to many county commissioners, does see an adverse choice not to raise maintenance of effort for this upcoming year, and can't really speak for the entire board, can't really speak for the commission, but says it does look like we will not be getting an increase in maintenance of effort on the general purpose for this year. They're still trying to finalize their budgets. Mr. Buddy Harlan is still trying to wrap up. They have a meeting Monday night. He's hoping to have their budgets done Monday night. There is the potential to do what we did last year of wrapping all the budgets into one and the county commission voting on them all at the same time. But he said, I can neither confirm nor deny that's going to happen based on Monday. He said, is there the potential, would your board like to present Tuesday? I asked him, well, if your budget's not ready Monday, would there be a reason for us to present Tuesday? And he said, good point, not really. So unless we want to have a special called meeting Monday night to present a different budget to the county commission than what we've already presented, not really sure where you guys want to go from here, because they're not even sure where they are at this point.
Ms. Kinzer?
You're saying the only change we could make would be to send it without the raise in it as they requested, which we didn't want to do. But
Yes.
that doesn't mean that they would do away with that, but that also is about the size of the maintenance of effort. I don't want to lose that, but I do think we need to schedule a budget meeting to see what we can do.
And that's the conversation I had with Scott Sumner's, to say, that $2.2 million that we need would be for the 3% raises, because everything else we've kind of figured in. And he said, it doesn't look like you're going to get an increase in your general purpose. He said, we still want the teachers to get the raises. We're with you. We want them to get what they deserve, what they work for. We agree with you that our teachers work hard, but it does not see an increase in maintenance of effort in order for us to fit in the raises to our current general purpose budget.
Well, I think, once again, we're just going to have to go back to the drawing board, because I don't want to get rid of that, and I just think we're going to have to look at some tightening our belts. Look at different areas where we can cut, maybe even some personnel positions that we could do without. I mean, I think that's what we need to do.
We'd have, that cost would have to be around $2 million of personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Pennings?
Dr. Marzak has said that we can give a bonus, 1.5 bonus in December and 1.5 bonus to the teachers at the end of the school year. That would take care of that. The only problem I have with that is, by giving the bonus, you do not raise the basic salary of the teachers. And that's what we've been fighting for. That's what we need to do, is raise the basic salary. So yes, we can give a bonus, and Dr. Marzak says we can do that out of the fund balance. We could also give a 3% raise out of the fund balance, but now you're talking about not a one-time withdrawal. You'd have to have that same thing the following year. But I am not in favor of doing away with the teachers' raises. We can find some other way, and I'm also not in favor of the 1.5 at Christmas and 1.5 at the end of the school year.
Ms. Kinzer?
I'm absolutely not in favor of that, and I think if we're going to compete with the counties that are giving 3% next door to us, if we're going to recruit and retain the teachers that we need to keep, to the great teachers that we have to keep, we've got to be able to pay them a competitive salary with the county surroundings. We had MCA now going to help us recruit some minority. They've got to be able to offer them a good salary. I'm sorry, we purchased, since I've been on the board, softwares, all kinds of things. We've just got to tighten our belts. Once again, you've heard me say it, I don't think that that you can put the children first if you put the teachers last. I think that's the very first thing you ought to be thinking about, is taking care of those teachers. Everybody else, all we do, the administrators, the principals, the central office, everything, you all do your jobs to give them a classroom and the materials that they need to teach these kids. That's where learning happens. And even if it's on a computer or with a textbook, but it's with a good teacher who's inspiring them and giving them the motivation to learn. And so I want to be a county that tells our teachers that we appreciate them. They've had a difficult year with all the changes and certainly with what's happened with Skyward. And I would think that's the one thing we wouldn't want to touch. We've got to find it somewhere else.
Moving forward, I guess, what's the timeline for us to present a budget then to the commission?
So I was going to basically contact Scott Sumners tonight and basically just give him a sum up of this conversation. I guess the question is do we want to hold a special called meeting sometime before? Well, a lot of stuff is really based on what they do Monday night. I don't know what's going to happen Monday. Like I said yesterday morning at breakfast, he wasn't even sure if they were going to be able to approve their budgets Monday night. To him, I think he's getting a day-by-day update from Buddy Harlan about as far as where he is. So it's really hard to give some suggestions if we don't even know where the county commission is at this point yet.
With that being said, maybe we need to contact the budget chairman, and then all board members just be on the lookout for when we need to, I guess, have a specially called, or at least a budget committee meeting, and maybe a specially called meeting right after that. So I think we definitely want to present them with something, as opposed to just defaulting to what we got last year. Mr. Pennings?
Keeping in mind, we have to give 24-hour notice to the public if we have a special called meeting. So really, we couldn't even do it on Tuesday night after we get the information from Scott on Monday evening.
And we have submitted a budget to them. We've submitted the last budget, which had the 2.2 increase, but we didn't present a second budget with the raises split out. So they have a budget. It's whether or not they've already canceled one meeting saying they didn't want to hear that budget. So
I think they canceled that meeting, though, because we didn't separate out the raises.
Because we
and
didn't
that
separate, yeah.
prevented certain commissioners from being able to speak on essentially our whole budget.
True.
Mr. Moore?
A couple of things. I see no functional difference in letting if they're telling us we've got to drop it down to last year's numbers versus just waiting it out and they just refuse to hear it, they're going to make us drop it down to last year's numbers. What is the functional difference? Why do we keep having to have meetings on that? Let's just give them what we gave them and and move on with that. I don't see any reason why we need to keep belaboring that if they're going to force us to do that same thing either way, unless I'm misunderstanding what they're saying. Because it sounds to me like they're telling us that either we create a budget now that meets last year's numbers, or they're going to tell us we're going to be stuck with last year's numbers and we've got to create a budget. I'd rather not have extra meetings if we've got to do it either way. The second point is I know I've tried to be sympathetic to their concerns that the state legislature has put them in on how we present the budget. But to be blunt on that, they have not produced a solution to that problem yet. They keep saying they want it done differently. What that's requiring us to do is to present something that is not what we passed. And I have a problem with that. I don't know how, if no one yet, either their legal counsel nor ours, has presented us with a solution where we can present what we voted on in a format that's pleasing to them, I guess, for what they want to see. I don't know how that's our problem. I have not yet seen a solution to that we can give. If they've got a solution, I'm more than happy to hear from them what that solution is, and we can present it in that format. But so far, I haven't seen that, unless it's something the superintendent has that he's not made me aware of. So if they want it presented a certain way, and I just want to see what that is, and we can try to meet that, but I haven't seen it yet.
I think one solution that I heard from a commissioner that they felt like would suffice would be to submit our approved budget and then submit the one without the raises and submit it and state for discussion purposes only. Ms. Morency?
I make a motion that we submit it like that in two different ways. One, our approved budget, the second one for discussion only, so they can discuss it and then see what they come back with us to us with.
All right. Have some discussion, Mr. Pennings.
For 9 years, I've sat here and I've heard from other commissioners, basically not on this commission board, but other commissioners, and they've tried to do that to line item our budget. It is not our fault that out of 22 commissioners, they could not elect 6 to a budget committee that didn't have a conflict of interest. Now, my humble opinion, and I'm just an old country boy, even though I'm from Wisconsin, I'm still a country boy, they can just suspend the budget committee they got and elect 6 people that don't have a conflict of interest. We worked long and hard on this budget. That's the way we've always submitted a budget. They have a problem, not us.
I conferred with Jake Wolliver on that, on their request. He sent his assistant, but his recommendation is essentially moving down the item of line iteming, because the raises are a line item in your budget. And his recommendation to the board is that's a path you may not want to go down, because that would set a precedent for future commissions to come back and say, 2 years ago or 3 years ago you did this, now we'd like you to do this. And he just wants to advise the board that that's a precedent you may not want to set. And as well, Superintendent, that's advice I would give to this board as well. You be careful setting precedents that would then affect future boards down the road, because this is an action that you took this year.
Ms.
With
Morency?
that in mind, and on the advice of our attorney, I withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my second.
All right. Mr. Moore?
I just want to be clear.
Sorry, did I get that right? Okay.
And I thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for explaining that. It is my intention to work as closely with the county commission as we can. I want to try to give them something they can work with, but I have to hold to the integrity of what we're passing out as a motion as this board, and splitting things apart is not what we've passed. And if our legal counsel can, or their legal counsel can come up with a way, and I find it hard to believe that we're the only county dealing with this. Somebody would have had to have solved this problem before now if it was such a big problem. I just don't understand why somebody can't bring us a solution that has already been addressed, let us know exactly what we need to do, and then we can, and I think it's pretty clear that the rest of the board here would be willing to do that, as long as we can maintain the integrity of the motions we were passing out as a board.
Can I throw out the idea of a tentative special called meeting for Thursday, June 29th, based on what happens at the county commission on Monday, June 26th. And then if we don't have any further information or any further direction, we can always cancel that meeting on the 29th and send out information, if that's agreeable with the board.
Sounds good.
Well, I agree with that. I would, again, if you are speaking with the county commission, please encourage them to reach
speaking
out.
with one member.
Well, anyone they could, I would encourage the county commission, find us a solution that has already been solved on this and let us know what it is and we can go with it.
Just to comment on that, the county commission is having a full county commission on the 29th to pass budget amendments and everything else, and that's at 4:30. So I don't know if that might be a conflict, but they already have that.
We'll have our meeting at 6, so it should be okay. Yeah.
So we'll have a specially called meeting on Thursday, the 29th at 6 o'clock.
If that's okay with you guys.
Do we need to have a work session, a work session first and then a call meeting? Don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. We can always work through that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. 29th.
8:30.
All right. Any other comments, announcements? Let me just say, I know Mr. Bates is not here, but I think he has done a very admirable job leading our board for the last almost 2 years, and we are certainly appreciative of his service. And Mr. Moore has also been a great leader in his absence at times, and we certainly appreciate the work that both of them have put in these leadership capacities in the past, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve this board in this role. Mr. Penny.
I second that, and I think we'll still have good leadership.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second.